Hello, everybody. My name is Jax James, and I'm the Executive Director for Texas NORML. I wanted to welcome you to our November meeting, where we're going to talk about some current events that are going on in Texas and some other things that are going on around the country that we just wanted to highlight for you guys. As you know, in Texas, our legislature meets in every odd number year. So we do not have a legislative session coming up until January of 2025. But there are some things going on in the interim that are quite important that we want to make sure to let you know about. So I'm going to go over to my notes, make sure I don't miss anything, and cover some of the current events of what's going on here in Texas. So if, as I'm going, you want to drop in the comments where you're watching from or ask any questions about what I'm talking about, or just some questions in general, feel free to do that. So let's go ahead and kick it off. So activists in Lubbock, Texas have submitted twice the number of signatures that are required to compel city officials to vote on a measure depenalizing marijuana possession. The initiative seeks to end arrests and citations for adults who possess misdemeanor amounts of cannabis under 4 ounces within the city limits. The measure will also prohibit police from issuing citations for charges related to the possession of marijuana paraphernalia. Last week, advocates behind the Freedom Act Lubbock ordinance provided 10,540 signatures to the city's secretary's office, well above the threshold of valid signatures required. Once the signatures have been verified, city officials will decide whether to enact or reject the measure. If they reject it, the measure will go before voters as a ballot question next spring. So we will be putting a blog post up with some different links and information about it, but I did want to kind of give some context to what's going on in Lubbock. Voters in several other Texas cities, including Austin, Denton, Elgin, Harker Heights, Killeen, San Marcos, have all approved similar ballot measures in recent years. In some instances, like Harker Heights, local officials have attempted to halt the implementation of the measures following voter approval. Bell County is certainly currently suing Killeen to stop the implementation. And since 2012, NORML has identified over 120 cities and counties nationwide that have passed ordinances providing significantly lower cannabis-related penalties than those that are provided under state law. So a bit of clarity for everybody watching here tonight. In Texas, we are not a state that has ballot initiative at the state level that addresses our marijuana laws. Our marijuana laws are state regulated laws, which means that they have to go through the legislature in order to be changed. However, there are some locations called free cities in which people can do certain measures within a little bit of jurisdiction. There's some lawsuits going on about, where those boundaries are. But for those cities that are choosing to uphold these ballot initiatives at the local level, it is important to note that it is only enforceable for the local police department. It doesn't apply to state police. It does not apply to DPS. So if you're in the area, the police for, let's say, Austin would not arrest you or cite you for possession. But if you come across a DPS or a state trooper, those people absolutely can and will arrest you and penalize you for it. So while these are great measures that are happening across our state, it does create a bit of a patchwork and can be confusing for some people because statewide it is still illegal. You can still be arrested and face these consequences. So I did want to give a little bit of context to that. But we are rooting for Lubbock. It will be interesting to see if City Council enacts or rejects the measure. So stay tuned. If it does go before you guys next spring in Lubbock, it will be a special election. So we'll definitely need to get out the vote there. Now, I wanted to talk a little bit about marijuana arrests. In 2022, Texas police just made under, I don't know why that's a tongue twister tonight. In 2022, Texas police made just under 25,000 marijuana related arrests, according to the FBI Crime Data Explorer. Over 98% of those arrests were for marijuana possession. So current Texas law, possessing any amount of cannabis is classified as a criminal misdemeanor, punishable by up to 180 days in jail, a $2,000 fine. Of course, there are certain cities and jurisdictions that have tried to locally depenalize possession, but that does not change the state law. Another thing I want to mention is in Texas, concentrates are a first-degree state jail felony. So one drop of it, first-degree state jail felony. And there's also recently a law that was passed that prevents any vaping of students on campus and provides really harsh penalties for that. So keep that in mind at all times. However, there is a robust hemp market here in Texas. There is a fairly limited medical program here in Texas. So there have been some advancements. Last session, there was a lot of support for penalty reduction, decriminalization of both flower and concentrates. So talking about overall arrests for marijuana, law enforcement officials made well over 250,000 arrests for marijuana-related violations in 2022, according to the FBI's Crime Data Explorer. According to this online database, which was updated on Monday for the data for the year of 2022, police made 227,108 arrests for marijuana violations last year. Of those, 92% were for possession only. This total is a slight uptick from 2021, when the FBI reported a total of 219,489 marijuana arrests. However, these totals are underestimates because there is a significant percentage of law enforcement agencies that still fail to report their data to the FBI. For example, for the year of 2022, 83% of agencies, representing 75% of the total U.S. population, reported their data, up from only 63% of agencies in 2023. Therefore, it's unclear if the uptick is in reported marijuana possession arrests is due to changes in police tactics, or if it's due to more agencies reporting, or both. Adding to this confusion, in some instances, the raw data provided by the agency and its downloaded zip files is inconsistent with data published elsewhere on the website. So that's great. In all, some 30% of all reported drug-related arrests in 2022 were for cannabis. We'll again have a blog up sometime tonight or tomorrow with links to all of this information. I wanted to cover something that is going on in Colorado. So Colorado retailers are in strict compliance with the state's minimum age laws, and they are not selling cannabis products to underage patrons, according to data that has been provided by the state government and was reported by Marijuana Moment. Data from 2022 shows that underage operatives were denied access to retail cannabis products 99% of the time, up from 94% in 2016. These findings are consistent with results in other states. For example, a 2022 inspection of licensed retailers in California reported that marijuana businesses were 100% compliant with the state's ID verification policy. Authors of the study concluded that, quote, underage youth are not obtaining marijuana at licensed recreational outlets, end quote. Another study published by the Journal of Studies of Alcohol and Drugs assessed the retailers' compliance in California, Colorado, and New Mexico. These authors concluded, quote, compliance with laws restricting marijuana sales to individuals 21 years and older with a valid ID was extremely high and possibly higher than compliance with restrictions on alcohol sales. Data gathered from point of sales audits randomly selected in retailers in Denver, Los Angeles, Las Vegas, Seattle, similarly, all reported 100% compliance with the law. Data provided earlier this year by the CDC reported that the percentage of high schoolers who report to having used cannabis over the past 30 years have fallen by nearly a third over the past decade, during which time 23 states have legalized the adult use of marijuana. So if anybody wants to come and tell you that legalization is just the scourge for our children and is exposing them to this dangerous plant, let them know. False. False. Legalization is making sure that there is an ID and that that is an age-appropriate person purchasing these products. So next, let's talk about cannabis law and its effect on traffic fatalities. Changes in state legal status of cannabis is not associated with a rising motor vehicle fatalities, according to an analysis that was done by a news agency called Quartz Media LLC. Researchers took data from 2016 to 2019. They excluded data from 2020 and 2021, which they determined to be anomalous because the US as a whole experienced a 19% spike in traffic safety deaths during those years. Now, in the 4 legal states assessed, traffic deaths fell by an average of 12% in the 3 years immediately following the adoption of adult use marijuana legalization. By contrast, deaths increased nearly 2% over the same time in the 5 control states. Nationwide, traffic fatalities decreased 10.6% during this time period. So, traffic fatalities did not increase in any of the 4 states that legalized in 2016 during that 3-year period. Their analysis reported that, quote, 3 of the 4 states saw a significant decrease in vehicle deaths over that span, while the rate in Maine showed no change. Massachusetts saw a big drop as the rates fell 28.6% in the 3 years following legalization. It concluded, quote, there are legitimate concerns about the marijuana legalization debate. However, based on our research and the research of others, the effects that legal marijuana could have on traffic safety should not be one of those concerns, end quote. So I also want to bring up something that is going on in Ohio. And just a reminder, if you guys have any questions as I'm going, drop them in the comments. If you want to tell me where you're watching from, I would love to know. But in Ohio, 2 recently released polls showed that Ohioans remain solidly behind an election day effort to legalize marijuana possession, home cultivation, and sales. So the first poll, which was compiled by Ohio Northern University, finds that just under 2/3 of Ohioans expressed general support for legalization. Then the second survey, conducted by Public Policy Polling, found that 59% of voters intended to vote in favor of Issue 2. So the Issue 2 ballot proposal allows for adults to grow a personal use amount of marijuana at home, establishes a licensed market for the sale of cannabis products, and if enacted on Election Day, so that's November 7th, the possession of marijuana will become legal for adults on December 7th. However, the proposed measure is a statutory question rather than a constitutional amendment, so state lawmakers have the option to amend its provisions legislatively. Early voting has already begun in Ohio, and according to media reports, voter turnout is already well above expectations, particularly in some of the state's larger counties. If passed, Ohio will be the 24th state to legalize the adult use of marijuana and the 14th to do so by a public vote. So I now want to talk about some ongoing actions that you can participate in at the federal level. Let me get comfy real quick. Okay, so talking about some federal action alerts. So the Senate Committee on Banking, Housing, and Urban Affairs is about to hold its first ever markup hearing on cannabis banking reform legislation with the newly introduced Safer Banking Act. Your senators need to hear from you to make sure that the bill will move forward to a full vote in the Senate. This bipartisan legislation represents an improved version of the Safe Banking Act, which had already been approved by the House of Representatives 7 times, and which will allow state licensed cannabis businesses to more easily access financial services such as simple bank accounts and traditional lending that are available to other legal businesses. The lack of access to these services creates serious threats to the safety of cannabis consumers and employees of the businesses that service them. It limits transparency and accountability for the legal industry and severely hinders the ability of small businesses to effectively compete with the underground market and large, well-funded companies. So I am going to go ahead and take this link right here, and I am going to drop it in the comments over here for you guys. And I would love to have you please participate in this action alert. It's a simple click of a button. You can edit the form letter if you would like, and then hit send. Very easy peasy. Now, the second action alert that I'd like to talk about has to do with limiting federal discrimination for past cannabis consumption. So HR 5040, which is known as the Cannabis Users Restoration of Eligibility, or CURE Act, is long overdue legislation that limits federal agencies' consideration of cannabis use when making security clearance or federal employment suitability decisions, and allows those applicants that were previously denied employment or clearances to appeal those decisions. Passage of the CURE Act would greatly diminish the discrimination that responsible cannabis users have long faced when trying to obtain federal jobs or security clearances. It would also improve both the operation of federal agencies and national security by significantly expanding the talent pool that is eligible for these roles. So research shows that responsible off-the-job cannabis use does not negatively impact the workplace. More and more states are taking steps to protect the employment rights of cannabis consumers and improve opportunities available for them. So the federal government, as one of the nation's largest employers, should do the same. I'm going to go ahead and take this link, copy and paste it, and I'm going to pop it over in here in the comments section. There we go. Okay, so we've got both of those action alerts in the comments. Clickety click, participate, let your senators know so that we can help keep this legislation moving and alive. It's great to see safer banking continuing to move forward. Here in Texas, seeing Lubbock submit all of those signatures is a great advancement forward as well. So stay tuned for more on that. And just to remind you guys, right now, we're in an off-year election, so there's quite a few ballot initiatives that'll be on the ballot in November, but no state legislators are currently up for election. That will be next year. So we have a year to get ready for the next legislative session. When elections happen next year, just 6 days later, legislators can start authoring legislation. And so it's extremely important that we are ready to hit the ground running. So make sure that you go to texasnormal.org. You can go to our shop to become a member or to purchase some of our merchandise. There's also a volunteer tab where you can fill out our volunteer form to let us know what different topics and areas you're interested in participating in, and we can get you looped in on that. Of note, on the volunteer front, we do have our Puff and Putt coming up in April, which is our great benefit that we host out at Willie Nelson's golf course with music, food, disc golf, ball golf, or just regular golf, whatever you want to call that, as well as lots of vendors. It's a good time for everybody. And if you want to volunteer for that, you definitely have to sign up to be a volunteer and participate in our volunteer training for that. So we plan on hosting that volunteer training in March. So stay tuned for more information on that. So I'm just going to come over to the comments real quick and see if there's any questions for me about the stuff that I went over. Again, we're going to post this all in a blog for you, and we will share it so that you can learn more about what's going on in Texas and those different cities across our state that are able to kind of play a little bit outside of the regular norm for most cities, which is status quo, follow the state law, as well as those arrest numbers for Texas and federally, some different information going on about what's happening with compliance for underage consumption in states that have legalized, as well as traffic fatalities in states that have legalized. I touched on what's going on in Ohio. I hope that whenever the polls close on November 7th, we will have that 24th legalized state. And then, of course, the two action alerts having to do with federal marijuana banking and limiting discrimination for past cannabis consumption. So coming to the comments, we've got some people watching from Dallas and some different places across the state. Happy to have y'all with us. I don't see any specific questions about what I covered, though. So I guess I will bid y'all adieu on this fine November night. I hope everybody enjoyed their Halloween weekend and Halloween yesterday. And I hope that you have a lovely evening tonight as we get ready for the holidays, I guess. So thanks, everybody, so much for joining me today. And I will see you next time.